Good to see you, my friend Tuomo. How's it going?
Wonderfully. How are you, Ari? Very good to see you as
Yeah,
well.
I'm pretty good. Actually, we've had a long time coming, this podcast episode, that we've been talking about this for the past, I don't know, few months at least, that we should give it a go. And I know that you have some experience in recording some episodes within your interests and your profession as well. But it's good to have this talk finally.
Very good to have this talk, and I'm very glad to be here, Ari.
Yeah, good to have you on. And a bit of background when it comes to how we know each other. It was back in, I believe I started 2010. I joined this company to become a salesman for vacuum cleaners, door to door. I moved to a new city from a small village that I was living in Finland, and this big city to me, which is a small town in general, Tampere, and I wanted to live there. And I applied for a job in this vacuum cleaner sales guys, door to door.
You're crazy.
Very traditional, classic work, and that's where I eventually met up with you as well. And you were already working there. What do you remember from those times?
Well, that's crazy times and very fun times actually. Like in many ways, I was in 3 years there, and. Well, I would say like there is rare other periods in my life that felt as long in terms of experiences and what all happened. And of course, like my life was pretty much changing all the way in that during that period of time. So I think like for me, becoming a salesman, I don't know what drove you, Ari. I think we have never actually talked about this. We were just selling those, and we were colleagues and trying to like support each other, which was like, I think the best thing in that place, the supportive environment, that people are really supporting each other. Later on in my career in sales, that's definitely not always been the case in all the places where I've worked. Sometimes it's more like backstabbing and trying to, but that place indeed, like, maybe it wouldn't come to your mind right away that people are so supportive in that environment, but that definitely was. And I think it's part because the job is extremely like mentally challenging. People are like, you getting rejected after rejected. And then when you meet your colleague who's also get rejected the whole morning, then it's good that there is somebody who is on your side, actually.
So, sounds very familiar, and I can relate basically to everything that you just said. But if I go back to the why I was ever in the first place going to the sales, actually, I never considered myself as a sales guy. And I just, I couldn't picture myself selling anything, but I just wound up there. But one of the good things about this company and the working door to door with the well-structured sales training for that goes back decades, I was just so blindfolded in a way that I was just looking at and listening to them and just following step by step how to do everything. And I just trusted the process. I didn't doubt anything because I didn't have any experience in sales and such. And I know it worked for some of them, and it was a really good training, but mentally very tough at times, as you were saying, and it was very important experience to me, like when colleagues were supporting each other, but on the other hand as well, it was the people who also remained in that profession for some time. Because one of the surprising factors to me as a young guy in general, because I moved into a new town, I rented an apartment, and I had to make a living from this profession that only pays through commission. There was no basic salary. So I was determined that, okay, this is the job that I'm going to do now, and I have to pay my bills with it. I'm not just coming here for a few days to have a look if it works. But that's something that I learned, that a lot of people, they just apply for jobs, they join the companies without putting any effort on the work. So we could see, I know you recognize this, we could see plenty of people coming and going after 1 day, after 2 days, after never showing up in the first place, or just giving it like 1 month and never going further from that. But the ones who stayed, they were supportive and pushed each other on. So that's I can relate to that.
Yeah, I believe it's really exactly like you mentioned, because people who were able to stay there, they had to become supportive. They couldn't make, like, you're going there alone into the door, but you cannot do the job alone at the end of the day, because we only have that amount of mental capacity that we were talking about. You need, if people are like, you're getting rejected, you need somebody to boost you, and then you go again there, and then you finally get somebody to say yes, and then you get this boost, like kind of like in sports. If you're like trying to like make a goal and nothing happens, you can see what happens to the team. The momentum shifts to the other team. But when the losing team seems like they're just losing, like in France in the last World Cup final, it looked like to the 80 minutes, like they're getting nothing done, absolutely nothing. And then they get a goal, and it's a game, a very different game, and very, very fascinating to watch the rest of the game. Until then, it was pretty much like, why am I even watching this game?
Yeah, so you have to remain resilient, because a shift in the mental focus can change everything. I've seen it plenty of times in football, and that was a good example there. But could you somehow put into words, how did you feel when you were there in the middle of the winter? It was snowing, it was cold, you were dragging that big backpack of vacuum cleaner and driving from door to door. And after 40 doors, everybody just said, no, don't come in. After 5 hours of working, how did you feel, and what was the next customer that you went into? Did you think that this is going to buy?
I think I was watching maybe it was a TV program in Finland, where they were like, actually go there and to work 1 day in somebody else's workplace. And I was like, oh, I would love to be there, because nobody knows how it feels like to get rejection after rejection, like, get out of here, no, 40 doors, 50 doors, 1, 2, 3 weeks sometimes, like, I think the worst case in my career was like 3 weeks without sales. And even when I started, it took like almost 3 weeks to get a sale. So when you lose that belief that it's going to work out, but then at the other hand, making excellent results, and then you get to learn that it's all about your psychology, like how you are able to maintain your belief that you're going to make it, although everything, like all the odds are against you. That's why I wear this shirt now, Defy the Odds.
That's good.
I never want to do things that are like for the norm. I always want to, yeah.
I hope you don't mind me bringing this up, but if I recall correctly, look, when it comes to these mindsets that you push yourself to work, and when you gain some sales, it keeps on coming afterwards because you're feeling good about it. But if I remember correctly, you had a record month. One of the years that you were working, you had a record month, and then the month after that, your sales was basically zero, if not even minus, because of some of the returns of the vacuum cleaner. Can you explain, like, what kind of mental shift happened to you? First of all, that you broke the record in the first place, and then the next month going basically to zero. What has to happen there?
That's a very good question, actually. And then, yes, like we were working in the same place, remember, in Tampere. And then I don't know how long it's been the place, but I think I actually did make a record in points. Our supervisor had the record in sold units, but I think, if I'm not mistaken, he can come correct it.
But at least it was your personal record.
It definitely was, yeah. It definitely was, and a big amount, a good record indeed. And then the next month, I believe I made the whole record on the whole time period on the least sales, like in minus. So like you mentioned, like
opposite
what has
record.
Yes, it was like, for me, it's definitely a big lesson that is all about your mind. because I'm the same person. I'm more skilled because I now have this experience on how to make great results. But the next month, I'm the same person with more experience, more skills, but my mindset is like, I don't have that vision anymore. I achieved it. And you can see the same thing happening in the world, even to like really high achievers. Like you see these, they even told that these, people, astronauts who first visited space, they all, I heard, I'm not sure if this is 100% correct, but ultimately got addicted to drugs, because you feel like, like we always, if you are a person who wants to have a goal and you want to grow, and then you lose that vision, you're going to find out, oh, I don't have the drive anymore. And even if you try hard, you don't get there. And then your total mentality goes to this place where you're basically from the high going to very, very low. So it's very fascinating. And it was a very teaching experience for me, that how much everything I do is actually about how I perceive it and what is my vision, what is my goal. So definitely the big difference there was that I lost the vision. What next? Like, and then I started asking myself these questions, like, and I started writing in paper, like, okay, every day I'm going to ring this many doorbells, like 50, 70, maybe 100 doorbells. And how long I'm going to work here? It's going to be 1 million doorbells left. And then your perspective, you're doing the same job, but your perspective is that I'm just going dragging here, this vacuum cleaner from dawn to roar, and everybody hates me. Go away from here. And the previous month, I had this great vision that I'm going to break my record, and I'm going to learn to really make great sales and salary and all this. But the next month, the vision was gone.
It's all about the determination. And I remember that month was also company-wide. It was a month that everybody were pushed to sell. So that's also part of the colleagues being an inspiration, that you not only compete with yourself, but also with the colleagues, or supporting the colleagues. Like all of you are going towards the record. So it plays a big part. And I can like now retrospectively look back at those times, and like now that I'm 36, and especially during the past few years, that I've been more and more curious about the personal development than I was ever before. And if I would go now back to the young guy that I was back then, I would have different tools to cope with those rejections and negative thoughts. Most likely it would be helpful, but on the other hand, I would never go back to that job. So it's kind of a combination of the two. But before getting back to this year and this moment, would you be able to share us one of the vacuum cleaner sales guys have not only a little bit, but quite a bit of shady reputation, right? I don't think there's question about it. No matter where in the world you are, there remains question marks about how ethical everybody is, what kind of stories goes behind the doors. Is there one story that you could possibly share to us that's a little bit unorthodox, whether done by you or by one of your colleagues?
You
maybe
like
not by you because you never had those experiences.
Yeah,
but
of course.
Any stories that you know from the colleagues that comes to your mind that would be interesting for listeners?
Yeah, well, I can definitely say this, that like you mentioned, like you do that job and you're on like full commission. And then you go, like you mentioned, nobody knows how you feel like when you go door, like rejection after rejection. And then at the end of the day, you also have to pay your bills. And especially I was talking to one of my colleagues who felt like bad about one of the sales that he made. And then he said like, well, I had to pay my bills, and he has like 3 kids, to make a living. So I think we come to the core of humanity. It's not just like, oh, the vacuum cleaner guy, he's the shady, crappy, like liar or something. But later on, I learned that this is happening, like all over the world. When I was working in these places where people are like, normally you look them up, like you don't have that kind of reputation when you're selling something else. But then you find out that these people do much worse stuff than the vacuum cleaner salespeople. So I believe we are not so different at the end of the day, because we both live in Finland. We're born in Finland. And I believe that if we were born in, some Harlem in United States or somewhere, we would be selling drugs. Like, I'm not pretending to be like the good guy here, but I also want to challenge the people who think like they are just so much better than other people, like our where we live and what we do and our environment shapes us. But I have seen many, many drug dealers die in doing what they do and kill other people with their substances. But then many people also change. So it's like, yeah, whatever you're doing, you're selling and doing business, you're always gonna have this place where you are in the midst of, like delivering value and working honestly. But then you see that there is a lot of people like doing shady things and like exaggerating their promises. Then you're gonna have this temptation to exaggerate as well. So if you know what I mean.
I must agree with that, and it's one of the things that I'm also bothered by when people talk. Let's take an example of local politics here in Finland, for example. Like, you talk to an average person who walks on the street, and they complain. Let's say that the members of parliament, they raised their own salary once again.
Yeah.
How could they do that to us? Well, let me put you in the same position that you will be in the meeting where they discuss that. Okay, who's in for a little bit of raise for our salary? Everybody in? Oh yeah, everybody in. You would do exactly the same thing in that position. So don't pretend that you would be somehow way more altruistic than those people who you actually voted for to get into the position. And recently I've been reading this book as well. It's a super interesting book. It touches the topic a little bit, Corruptible by Brian Klaas. And he mentions this, I forgot what's the name of the documentary, but you can also find it on Netflix, where there's this Osho that's running this community in the States, eventually moving from India to the States. And then he has this right-hand woman who's like a kind-hearted, loves this person, loves this guru, but eventually turns to one of the biggest bioterrorists in the history of the States, if I'm not mistaken, because of the opportunity and the power that corrupted her mind. Because he had the chance to do all of that. He gained power over people, over communities, and then he saw opportunities, and she became this kind of a evil to some extent. But nowadays, living in Switzerland in a nursing home, like taking care of people as a nurse, and now she's viewed as a kind-hearted, wonderful person because she's living in completely different environments. Well, so it has to be that it's also the famous quote that's there. It's a little bit off topic, but it says by Lord Acton that power tends to corrupt. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. And this is what it tells, that like if once you reach the position of power, most likely it's gonna fuck up your mind, because you can see that in today's world as well. Like when I found it fascinating when people in like big leaders, whether it's in companies or politics or governments, they reach a certain level of status, whether through power or money, they could like forget about everything, forget all the popularity, the fame, just disappear, enjoy their life, do whatever they want, no money issues, but they still hold on to that power position and the money position. And they, like FIFA is a great example for that. They just cannot let it go once they reach this position. It's a fascinating thing for the human mind. But now I believe I got a little bit off topic, but it's still touching the same concepts of the human mind.
I do believe it is actually, like you mentioned, run to this topic from there, but it's like universal. And I actually also read somewhere that some, psychologists had studied that, it's kind of like when you gain power, it might become like an addiction, like a drug addiction or something, or even worse. And you can definitely say like, okay, I don't know, is that correct assumption or not? But if you look at it and you see, like you mentioned, people don't want to give up their power no matter what. And then even like they should know themselves that it's better to them to step off the leadership, but they don't want because they have this addiction. Yeah,
And
so it can be.
Yeah, definitely. So another book about this topic, I'm in the middle of. It's the 48 Laws of Power that I'm looking for to finish the book by Robert Greene. It's a super interesting book and very, very smart guy as well. But let's get back to the present moment. And we've just started the year 2023. And I know like some similarities again when it comes back to us. We both started our professional careers in similar position and then ended up working in different companies for sales. But in the past couple of years, months or whatever, we've both become, if I'm not mistaken, more curious about like how to live more like profound life, meaningful life when it comes to profession or mental state or family or relationship and all of that, and how to improve that. And also now like you can explain it more, but if I'm like, you're at the moment working with the like speakers with the people who are doing so well, but can you share us a little bit what you're doing these days?
Yes, for sure. Yeah, well, for me, like mentioned, well, I didn't tell my story so much because when I started, before I actually started selling the vacuum cleaners, and I asked what got you in there, but I think somewhere like I wanted to learn to sell, but like subconsciously there was this that I wanted to show people that I'm better than you think, because, like I was always the shyest kid at school, at my class. And then I got bullied and I had like really low self-esteem and all this. And like, for me, like becoming this, like I can sell people, first of all, I go door to door and talk to anybody and learn to sell people and connect with people. It was like huge thing for me. Of course, I wanted to learn to sell and all these things. But back then I also was attending some seminars where I saw public speakers. And then one of these speakers really hit me because he had like a little bit similar background as me, and his story really touched me because I felt like, hey, he can like help me see things differently, that I can actually succeed and become great at what I do and have a great life. And then it's actually in that time, that first time, that I was really got interested about storytelling and public speaking. And that's what like I kind of like came back here in a circle where I wanted to learn public speaking myself and help other people share their message and story. So whether it's like, of course, when we say public speaker, what comes to your mind, Ari, actually, if I say public speaker, what first comes to your mind without overthinking?
A person who steps in front of the crowd. To me, it's a live crowd and talks about whatever the topics he or she's meant to be talking about. Like it doesn't matter whether the size is 1 or 300 or 50,000 people.
That would be like that would be like the correct answer. Most people think like a public speaker, it's like Les Brown or Tony Robbins or somebody huge who is talking to thousands of people. But I agree with you definitely that public speaking can be even something you talk to 2-3 people. And in me, my opinion is I've heard people, because I have my podcast where I interview people who have been bullied at school as well. And many of them actually being like suicidally depressed and even attempted suicide. And then I still remember this, like the commonality between them, how they healed, was when they spoke to somebody about their wounds. And I feel like whatever wounds like you've had in your life or traumas, I think the first step is that you talk to somebody about it. because many of these people say they never talk. They even visited therapy, but they never talked about the most painful things that they went through. And then later on, they met somebody in their life, and it completely transformed their life when they were able to speak about it. So my mission is now to help people to first of all, speak about what they're going through, and then public speaking, because speaking can heal us and public speaking can heal others. That's what I've noticed. So that's why I'm passionate about helping people to share their message.
You say that some of them have healed from are you saying from depression or the previous wounds, or like what do they actually heal from? Like what kind of behavior they had that is completely transformed into the better human being that they're now? Do you think they're completely healed from the past traumas, or they learned how to cope with it? And do you see some common things between the people that you've talked to? Like what were the solutions, how they found help, and apart from the speaking itself?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And first of all, like we talk about healing, let's say that there is never a state where life is perfect and everything is perfect. So in my opinion, like we have this some sort of thing or happened to us. It's like somebody might be now, if you're listening, like, oh, is this it? It's going to be a life sentence. But what I've learned is that most of us carry things through the rest of our life, but you can learn to live with it. You know, like you have a scar in your arm. You're always going to have that scar, but the scar is a very different thing than an open wound. And that's exactly what happens. Like if you broke your arm, you know, and you never go to the doctor, it's going to bone incorrectly and it's going to hurt for the rest of your life. But if you go to doctor and fix it the correct way, then you can always live with it, and maybe you don't even notice it. Maybe you sometimes feel some pain, but it's not like controlling your life, if you know what I mean. And it's the same thing with our mental health. If we never deal with the things, we just push through, that's what the common pattern I've seen when people get also like burned out, is that they just push through and they try to thrive, and there is some old things inside them. They never talk to anybody, they never heal them, and eventually comes to total stop. They get a burnout, they cannot work, they depression for years or the rest of their life. So this is what I want to help spread the message, that if you have things that you haven't healed, it's advised to heal them before they become severe, you know, because it's always like in our physical health. Yes, in physical health, everybody knows that if you are overweight, if you are like 100 pounds overweight, it's very unhealthy and it's causing you other problems. So the same thing internally, if you have these things that are like killing you inside, they are definitely like killing you inside. And then you need to get, you need to process those things and deal with those things before they take your health. Yeah.
That's a good point. And when it comes to your own personal recovery, like what were the key things that you found? Where did you find relief? Was it through books, courses, talking, therapists, and what did you learn from that path?
Yeah, very good question. Well, I would say all of those. So it starts from your self-discovery and emotional intelligence. That first of all, you need to acknowledge the emotion, that this is a negative emotion. So there is always two things that you can do. Like you want to acknowledge that, hey, everything's not right, and you need to listen to your body instead of just push forward like we tend many times to do. Of course, sometimes we need to do that, and we need to put the emotions inside, but you cannot do that forever because it will come backslash you. So yes, books and seminars and also some therapy, but also life coaching has been a very good big part for me, because it's more like it goes topics and wants to proceed you further you like to proceed, like, okay, this happened, but you don't need to stay there. For me, that's the big thing, that it helped me like proceed with those things instead of living in the old stories that we tend to have subconsciously inside our mind.
Like for anyone who's currently suffering from bad thoughts, depression, whatever it may be, I know every person is different and needs to be handled differently, but on average, would you have some practical tips that everybody could take right now to start the process of healing, because they feel desperate? And I just as an example, I remember this. Wim Hof was explaining at some point that, because he's talking a lot about the cold exposure and its importance and the breath work and all these things and mental states, consistency, all that. But he was explaining, I don't know the biology and the science behind it, but he was saying that when a person is depressed severely, the feeling, the emotion lasts from the morning until you fall asleep. So it's all day. But then if you can force yourself to take a moment to take a cold plunge, like you take a swim in a cold bath, ice bath, or you put the shower to the coldest, you stay there for 30 seconds. And this moment in time, it gives your body such a shock that all the blood goes to the vital organs, and your mind is basically incapable of having those depressing thoughts for this short period of time, because the whole focus of your system goes into surviving, right? So all the focus goes into surviving. You have no time to go through these thoughts. Cold exposure is one way of doing that. And once you consistently do that over days and days, your brain starts to see that, okay, I can have these short moments during my day that I don't feel depressed, even though it can be a bit subconscious, but eventually you start to understand, well, I don't always feel like that. What is the difference? So you start to see a bit of light at the end of the tunnel. What would be this kind of, let's say, 3 practical tips that everybody could take?
Yeah, thanks for that question. Yeah, actually, cold is a very good, and you had a good way to explain it. I just took a short cold shower before this interview, actually. So it's also like it gets you like really refreshed and focused. And actually, the surprising benefit of it is actually helps you stop procrastinating. Because the way I go to shower, I put it as cold as possible, and then I count to 10. 1, 2, 3. And by the time of 10, I need to jump there no matter how I felt like. And that's the rest of the things during your day too. When you procrastinate, you don't want to do it. And then you go, okay, 1, 2, 3. And then I do it. I just do it. So you can kind of gain energy from there to other things as well. So that's good. But I would like to say the most important thing where I would start, and also the people that I talk a lot to, people who have like mental health struggles. I'm actually building a podcast with expert by experience in my town, people who have mental health struggles and all these things. Is like, if I could say one common thing between these people who feel depressed and this, is like low self-worth. So self-esteem is the key. And the thing is that, you really need to learn to love and appreciate yourself. And I know that it can sometimes be difficult if you've had like a difficult childhood and people have put you down and say like, you can never amount to anything, you cannot do this and you cannot do that. Maybe you was bullied, or maybe somebody cheated you, and whatever this happened, and it's normal that we feel that feeling like, oh, I'm bad, I'm not good, I don't have worth, I'm not worthy. But it's very unhealthy to live there. So the very first step is to learn to appreciate yourself. If we look at the world, we're living in this competition environment. Like mentioned, when we were selling the vacuum cleaners, they have these tables like who sold this and who sold that. Like everybody is measured. And when you go to school, you have numbers. this has this number and that number, and then it's very easy to start feeling that I'm this lower class citizen. I'm not worthy, and then you go to work, and it's full competition all the time. But if you look at the nature, we are all part of nature, right? We are human beings. We are from nature. And if you look at the tree, there is a longer tree, there is a shorter tree, there is older and younger tree, and there is different kind of like, it's not that all the trees, only the trees that are like the longest are the ones that we cut down every other tree or something like that. So you need to just learn to appreciate yourself on where you are and stop the comparison. Comparison can really kill your mental health, in my opinion.
Yeah, and the nature reminds me as well that I want to take a bit deeper dive into that, because as you and we discussed offline before we had this recording, that when it comes to mental problems or autoimmune diseases or obesities or the general health of the public, it's on multiple levels. It's decreasing, and we're getting sicker and sicker while living longer and longer. Which actually now it's reached the peak, so we're not doing that even anymore. And what do you see are the, like on a big scale, global scale, if we have to mention few things that are causing this, we can call it pandemic of like some sort
mental
of disease,
health pandemic,
mental health pandemic, but also physical health, like health overall is decreasing.
Yes,
because you mentioned nature already. I believe that the huge part of this trend is because of our disconnection from the nature. But how do you see in a big scale, not like moving from individuals, as you mentioned, because everybody has their own problems and we have to deal with them. But when we're talking about like nationwide or globally, how would you see are the biggest reasons that we are heading towards the direction that we're heading?
Well, that's
big question.
That's a big question, because if I would have, I think if people would have answer, we would also find the solution. But it's about asking the right questions.
I have to disagree with that, but go
on. Yeah, well, that's another story. Okay, but well, what would be the solution for all that? I think
not solution, but what are the causes, or what are the things that are correlating with the fact that we have this trend of decreasing health? But when it comes to your situation, we can talk about the mental health, because that is the people that you're talking about. It's not only the individual part, but you mentioned the nature, for example, that the nature doesn't work like that. I remember hearing as an example, quote from a doctor recently, that he said that in his point of view, nature doesn't produce waste in any way. Like if we talk about, on average, you talk about your urine, for example, you think of that as removing toxins and waste from your body. But what it does to the nature, it grows something new and it gives nutrition to the nature. So everything in that way is connected through hundreds of thousands of years. But in the past 100, 200 years, we've been more centralized in city locations, and we're getting more and more disconnected from nature. Like I myself, I live next to the sea, next to the forest, but I'm still in a city environment. I go multiple days in a row without having a physical touch to the nature. So even in circumstances like this, we're just so disconnected from it. So that's one example that I'm thinking that it's a huge causation to the direction we're heading. But do you see any of this kind of big topics?
That's a good one, because if you have the opportunity, like I'm blessed to have the opportunity to have a forest just, 500 meters from my home, and I go there every day with my dog. And
one question, like even if you go, do you touch the ground or the forest itself, trees, with your bare skin ever? That's a question.
Not actually, no.
Exactly.
No.
that's like one of the things. But of course, you breathe the air and you're in the environment. You can see it, you can breathe it, which is a big part of it. But the actual physical touch is missing, right?
Yeah, it is. But you can still feel it when you like, if you try to cut yourself off the noise from your head and the stress and whatever is going on in your life. When you go to forest and you just listen to the trees or whatever sounds you hear there and breathe and like kind of like meditate the nature, that you just feel it in there, you can definitely feel different. And sometimes like I really get like creative ideas when I go to the forest and I start writing something. Oh, I got a good idea or content coming when I go there. So you can see the difference in your mind. So I can definitely see that we are, well, unfortunately, not everybody has that opportunity. I hope they have some other methods to deal with that. And like you mentioned about the health, and yeah, we're talking mental health, but it's also good to know that mental health and physical health go hand to hand. Definitely. So you really need to focus on both things. If you want to be mentally healthy, you need to be also physically healthy, and if you want to be physically healthy, you need to be mentally healthy. You cannot go exercising if you're not feeling internally in that having the energy to go exercising.
Yeah, and technically you kind of that definitely they are connected, and we are just one being in that sense. But then if you flip those things around a little bit, like you cannot mentally get physically stronger. You cannot get really physically stronger by thought alone, right? But if you can somehow force yourself to physical exercise, you will get also mentally stronger. So that's something that it's if you can somehow push yourself to physical activities, that's one thing. And
that's true.
And what about then, like when it comes to your discussions, I know that the main focus is on talking through the problems and the issues that they are having in mind. But do you have some input on like nutrition, for example? What kind of nutrition have been found helpful in dealing with mental issues, or do you see a correlation there?
Well, I believe there definitely is a correlation there. And, like we're living in this fast food environment. And, well, definitely I would say that if you eat junk food all the time, that's bad for you. And I know there is like many experts on nutrition. I'm not like a nutrition expert. I'm more like somebody who likes to eat, like not go to like one extreme, like not going there in the extreme, like eating junk food all the time and drinking beer every day and all that. But I also don't like to go over to another extreme, like you're measuring every single calorie and everything you eat, because also it's been said that many people might get now stressed out for that. And the stress is something that actually is proven to prevent you from losing weight, for example, if you want to lose weight. So if you are always stressed, your body goes to this mode where you are actually, it's like, I don't know what they call it, like protecting or whatever it's doing, like it's very difficult at least to lose your weight.
Your digestive system shuts down.
Yeah.
Because it's preparing you for the tigers to attack.
Yes, exactly.
That's why everything else will shut down, like digestive system, and then things start falling apart, I believe.
Exactly. And everybody goes there. Of course, we are stressed. We have these experiences, and you might have like a profession that is stressing, or maybe you're in your family, but it's not healthy to live there all the time, like chronically living in that state.
Yeah. And like my question, like, as you said, like you're not a nutrition expert, but when you talk to these people who are suffering, do you point them into a direction that maybe you could also use nutrition as a tool to improve the quality of your life? Or is it something like you point them like, this guy knows this book is good, or maybe you should look into this and this and this? Is this something you do, or this is not?
Yeah, it's more... It's not like the main topic. It's something that I most mostly would recommend them to go contact somebody else who could, if they want further instruction. But in general, I like to get them into the place with, like normal habits, like, because sometimes if things go over you are actually eating very unhealthy and it's a good place.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt, but that's the one thing that I somebody said it. It's funny when you go to grocery stores these days, you actually have a health food department there, health food section. So what is the rest of the food? Is it like, is it the purpose of the food is to keep us healthy? So now we have to have these narrowed down so-called health food sections, which is always even not the health food, but the idea of that is just curious. But the reason I'm asking for the connection between mental health and nutrition is that because oftentimes, if I'm not mistaken, if a person is depressed, the serotonin production in the body is very limited, so you're not getting enough. So then you can, as a doctor, prescribe antidepressants, which increases your serotonin levels, and then for some time you will feel fine. But now, like the latest or the new science or whatever is discovered that up to 90% of the serotonin production actually happens in the gut. And part of that goes then up to the brain. So with my common sense, if it's 90% of the serotonin production that it's in your gut, and your gut deals with the food and the nutrition that you eat, and what you eat plays part in every function that's happening in the gut, because you are what you eat, literally, because that's how you get everything inside your gut. So if it didn't matter, like if your gut doesn't function properly, also that decreases your serotonin levels extremely low. That's the reason I was asking something that I learned recently.
Yeah, that's a very good topic, and I do believe that we're living in this place where if you go to store, it's I think we haven't still proven how unhealthy it all is actually, but
I think we have, as we were talking about these health issues that we have globally. I think that's sort of a proof that something is off on a big scale. Yeah,
that's true. Also, like, of course it is, and then also this. Of course, it's about the amount you eat and amount you exercise and all these things together. But I also believe, because we are getting busier and busier, also it's then many times more difficult to pay attention to all these things, because you really, if you really would like to be like a nutrition expert, which I'm not, I should go train myself more on this topic, and many times we don't have time for that. And if you want to have a good exercise routine, they say like actually too much exercising is not good for you. But obviously too little is not good either. So you should find the middle way which actually suits your schedule. It's like sometimes fitting all these things together might be challenging to people.
Yeah, and like I understand you said that there's not always enough time to. In my opinion, you should stick to your expertise as well, but acknowledge that, let's say that in a big scale, nutrition, for example, can be very helpful. Then you can point them out that with these resources, you can find more. I don't know a lot about it, but here you can find more because I understand that this is an important part as well. This is my expertise, but here you can find more about nutrition, connection to nature, benefits of exercise, all that. So you can acknowledge in a big scale that these are the important things that you can focus on, and then point them into that direction. It could be useful as well.
Yeah, true.
But also, I wanted to talk about putting this mental health of people aside, because you're also looking to build some sort of own businesses and such, and you mentioned these courses that you've been taking. Did you want to update us on that? Like what's the current status on the projects that you're handling, and what kind of courses have you been taking? About podcast you were mentioning, for example.
You mean like about my own projects that I'm creating?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, true. I'm building actually 2 podcasts at the moment. So I'm together in our town in Finland, Turku, with the mental health organization. I'm interviewing these people who have mental health struggle and overcame different kind of experiences in their life, so that they can share their message to help, because they are recovering their life through all those things they went through. So that, in my opinion, they have so much to share with people about who are going through something similar as them, who might even be in a place where they are like addicted to drugs or alcohol or suicide or whatever, depression or something like that. And they see this person who has been able to be recovering from there. So they have good tips on how to get back on track on their life. And then I have another podcast too, the Bullied podcast, where I'm interviewing these people who have been bullied at school or home or workplace or other places. So kind of like the self-esteem topic in there as well. But then I'm also helping. It's more like those are my passion projects. To be honest, it's not like I don't see like so much.
That's extremely important, and it's very purposeful as well. Like it is kind of calling a purpose.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like we all should do our part on doing business, but we also should do our part in contributing. And I feel like, well, how I'm connecting these two things is that I'm helping other people who might have gone something similar, maybe not as bad, maybe you're not being a drug addict or something like that, but maybe you've had an experience that you feel that, oh, I've overcame it and I want to help other people, but I just don't like public speaking in general. Like for me, like when I was at school, I was sweating, I was the shyest guy at class, like public speaking was my worst fear, and it still was when I started doing this business. But I started doing it, I just started posting things on social media. I joined Toastmasters, where I'm currently the president in our Toastmasters club, where we train public speaking. And then I started making live videos on social media and sharing. And I went to the schools to talk about my experience of being bullied and restoring my self-esteem. So that's the place where you want to start in case you want to become a coach or somebody who creates these courses to help other people. And for me, it was the biggest challenge to really face my fear of really sharing my story and my vulnerability and doing public speaking, because, you know, every time that I had shared my vulnerability, I've been through a lot of courses, and they say that you want to share vulnerability and share your imperfections. And then every time that I felt like I've shared it, I've been bullied, I've been backstabbed, used and abused, all these things. You know, like for me, it was like a big barrier, but I did it anyway. So now I want to help other people.
I applaud you for that. It seems like you're the kind of guy who runs towards the fire all the way from probably before the vacuum cleaner sales guy, but at least from there you run towards the fire. And when it comes to public speaking or talking about your experiences, this kind of hands-on approach to talk about it and go through the fire, I think that sounds like the type of person that you are in general. And if you had a magic wand or you had all the power in the world or in Finland, what would you change for us to have less bullying in schools? When we talk about like elementary school, very important period where kids are going to the school for the first time after preschool if they attended. But what would be the things that you would change in the school system to prevent this kind of bullying from happening?
Yeah, absolutely. It all comes down to love and respect. So I feel like we're living in society where everything like this trash talking and putting other people down is even like many times like admired. That it's very great to be like trash talking and putting shit on other people. Which is, of course, like if you're in entertainment business or something like that, to some level it might go, but at the end of the day, you know, when we respect each other, that's what creates our society, like working society. I was actually watching, because you asked about Finland, and then I was watching this game from the last Olympic Games where they were interviewing Teemu Selanne, and they asked like what was, because we almost won on Torino the gold medal and it was the best team ever, and we were actually heading to this previous final during the interview, which we actually won, but there wasn't all the greatest player, to be honest, and playing there. But in 2007, I think in Torino, they asked like, what was the great thing about that team? And he said like everybody was with the team. So he said like most teams that I played, like there is somebody like they ignore some of the players and they're like, oh, you're worthless. You always go to this place. But this team in Torino, like everyone was united. Everyone is accepted. Everybody had their place. And I believe it all comes down to this nature that I mentioned to you about. Some trees are bigger, some smaller, but they all have their place. It's just crazy to say that there is somebody in that classroom who doesn't have a place in this world. So, and the sad thing is that the people who get bullied severely, they start feeling like they actually don't have a place in this world. And that's why they run into this low self-esteem, depression, even suicidal. So that's where we need to start, like, to let all the flowers blossom and to realize that everybody have their place. And also what I noticed that people with artistic talents, I've seen who get like alienated from society and feel like not worthy. I feel like many times the artistic talents are not appreciated enough. I was actually working for free in this place where they help these people who are like dropping out of the society. I was working there 2 weeks for free. And I saw this, they have this art workshop. And there is this guy who's making these great paintings. And I said, like, what is this talent? Like, he should be like in like art shows or something. But he's there, you know, like looking for the direction in his life. He has no direction. But, you know, many times I feel like these artistic talents are not appreciated enough in this society where everybody is taught to be in the same mold. And you need to be, you know, I think it's we have a wonderful school system here in Finland, but even we still have some aspects that we really need to develop.
If I'm hearing you correctly, we should be able to build an environment where there's more sense of belonging, sense of community, sense of appreciation, sense of acceptance for each individual.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Yeah. So, sounds like an important thing as well.
And it's true. But also I would like to emphasize that, of course, it's not only the job of the school. I think that's what makes it so difficult, because the school cannot change the things, because the things come from people, you know, hurt people. I was actually in this mental health.
It goes through generation from the previous generation to the next generation.
Yeah, I was talking to an audience with this person who used to be a bully, and it was like the most important, I would say, most interesting workshop that I've been to. It was a small group, but it was so interesting because I first told my story from being bullied and beaten and all that stuff, and then she told it was actually her, she told her story of, you know, bullying people and beating them with the iron pipe, and then she ended in jail, and you know, like her feelings, like how she ended up there and why she did what she did. And what's the amazing thing is that for me to realize that all these people, whether you're bullied or you are a bully, many times it's because the low self-esteem. Like even you might acknowledge it, or you might subconsciously do it. You might crave for attention because her brother was the bad guy in there. And then she said like her brother got all the attention at home. So she did everything to get the attention. And of course, like being the badass would be the best way. So, and then she even like was very proud of those things that she did. Like, yeah, I get repelled from school. Yeah, this is great. And even in a place when she ended up in jail, like this is the ultimate achievement. But this is, like the same thing you see happening when people end up in the street gangs. They have this sense of belonging and they have sense of pride, which they didn't receive from somewhere else. Of course, this is the wrong place to look for it. But these are the aspects. I would say, like, this might be a crazy suggestion, but we should look at because why do our kids end up in the street gangs? So look, what is the street gang doing correctly? What are they doing that you are not providing them? Maybe they want these things. It might be counterintuitive. You might not even want to look at it because it's criminal activity and all this. But how could you feel this need in more healthy way that it's not criminal?
Yeah, they want to find the most vulnerable people, hurt people, because they're the easiest to convince. They get the attention, they get the sense of community, they get the acceptance, and they get to be seen.
Yeah,
and it's a tough road to be taken, but this goes from generation to generation. As you mentioned, the family plays an important part. Do you know who David Goggins is?
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, because he's mentioned also he's had a horrific childhood. He's been
I've read his book actually.
Oh, yeah, it's on my list. I have heard of many of his podcast interviews, but I didn't read the book yet. But he was
the audiobook actually. I listened. I recommend the audiobook. Yeah,
the new one or the first?
The first one. Yes, yeah. I haven't read the last one.
Yeah, but the Can't Hurt Me. It's definitely on my list. But he was talking about it how he always hated his father for being very abusive to him and to his mother. And then he confronted the dad when he was adult and somehow got into conversation with somehow learned about the dad's history, how he was being abused and beaten when he was a child. And then something David understood from that oh shit, like that's where it all comes from. It's just passing it on, and he wasn't just able to break the cycle. So it's the David's job. But these are difficult things because these are the learned patterns that we learn when we're kids.
I also, when one of my worst bullies at school who was beating me all the time, and then I heard later on he actually died very young. I don't know how he died, but he was like 22, 3 maybe. And then I heard later that his stepdad was beating the shit out of him every day.
Oh, that's heavy.
Yeah.
It makes you
more understanding more about that hurt people. That's how it goes.
Yeah. It's a tough world out there. And now that we're heading for doomsdays, let's see how this will play out in the next 50 years, but let's hope for more love, more compassion, more empathy towards each other.
Can actually this is not completely the same topic, but because you was talking about the future, can AI develop empathy?
I believe so, yeah. It's an interesting book by a former Google ex-director, Mo Gaudat. It's called Scary Smart, where he's explaining about the possibilities and the threats of AI. And he's actually saying that how we should talk to whenever we talk to Alexa or our Siri or when we Google stuff or whenever we use AI, we should use the words that we use in a compassionate conversation. We should say thank you. We should say please. If we mistreat them, we should apologize. And this is because this is trained through the data that we are giving it, right? So once it starts to understand this is how you talk to people, it will start to treat people like this. So if you can consider that a machine can be empathetic and compassionate and have emotions, then we can have an AI that's empathetic.
So is AI actually only extension of us? And it becomes what we created based on our intentions?
Until the moment that it starts to recreate itself and train itself. And partly it's already happening, but it is definitely an extension of us. If we talk about ChatGPT, for example, that's been in the past few weeks, it's been exploding everywhere. what it can do with the language processing, it's insane how it's been trained and to what it can give answers to and how it can help you in multiple ways. But then you combine that capabilities to the Neuralink that Elon Musk is developing. So how soon are we going to have a chip installed into your brain that you have everything that ChatGPT gives you now, but it's within split seconds, it's in your mind? How soon have we reached that point? That remains to be seen.
And how can we develop an AI that would be a solution to these health problems that people would be like always have the answer and always disciplined and always eat the food they should and behave the way
we can, but there's no
should.
Incentive in it. Like we want to have sick people. Like our economies don't run if we don't have sick people in this world for some time at the moment. And a lot of people, they think short term. Imagine that you're a 70-year-old executive in a huge corporation or government position. You have 5 to 10, maximum 20 years to live. Are you going to think long term that what will happen in 100 years for humanity? Or is it like, okay, I've done my part, I will collect my payments, no need to change policies, I will enjoy the rest of my 10 years in this planet? This is the way that people think, most of them. So until we have the problem with that, I don't see it.
And the quartile economy.
Yeah. It's I don't know, it's an impossible puzzle to fix, but we do know the problems. We don't need AI to fix it. We do know where the issues come from, but there's no incentive in it. It's not enough money involved. Or not enough, actually also not enough powerful leaders who are willing to take those risks and chances to push these things forward. That's another thing.
Yeah.
So there's no hope, Tuomo. That's pretty much the conclusion when it comes to our conversation.
Yeah. Do you think we have free will?
No. Depends on what you like. We have a free will in terms of what we're thinking. Certainly no. Like we cannot choose that. Like if you choose not to think for anything for 60 seconds, can you do that?
I might think that I'm able to do it, but actually I'm thinking all the time.
Yeah. For 60 seconds, there's like, unless you're almost like super trained meditator, then you cannot do that. So do you then still have free will? Can you make the claim that you have free will if you cannot do that, even though you choose to do that? I don't think you can.
Good point, yes.
But then if the free will means that we have our choice to do what we want, then more so. Like if I decide to lift this microphone, like I did right now, maybe it's my brain or my consciousness that's doing the work, or maybe it's just everything that's, I don't know how you define it. If you think that everything that I live through my life, every influence that I got externally is making me the decision to lift this mic, then I don't know if that's called free will anymore.
Yeah, and basically what you're saying is that we have a level of control on our conscious mind, but subconscious mind not so much.
Yeah, and it's more difficult for the subconscious mind too, but we can control that too, but it takes a bit more effort. Let's say that like you get yourself, if you want to reorganize your neurons and have some new habit, how would you say it? New traits. If you want to react, let's say that you want to react in a different way for a situation, that over and over again you face a certain person, he says something, you're immediately triggered angrily, but you don't like that feature in you. It's just automatic. Every time you hear this person speak, you will get aggregated, you will get angry. and you don't like that about yourself, then what you can do is learn to, best way to learn to meditate or get into those lower frequencies of your brain. You go to from beta to alpha and theta levels. Theta is basically then you're dealing with your subconscious mind. So if you go into that state of mind, then you constantly repeat in your brain the scenario where you're facing this person. But this time in your brain, you're thinking that you will react to it with kindness, compassion, and you repeat it over and over and over again. So then it becomes part of your subconscious mind. So then the next time that you will meet the person, you will react differently because you already conditioned your brain to react differently. So you have these keys to tap into the subconscious mind as well, I believe.
Yes, and we also need to learn to, first of all, recognize the patterns. Let's say that you get angry when you see this person, but if you don't recognize it,
or you might be happy with it. You're happy to get angry with it.
Exactly. This is the second topic, that some people just don't want to change. They if you don't have this level of thing that you want to learn, you want to grow, you don't want to be angry, but if you want to be angry, you're never going to change anything for sure. And I think it's the same that you mentioned at the beginning of this conversation, actually, that when you started as a vacuum cleaner salesman and you thought that you're never going to sell anything and all this, but you was super you was willing to learn, and you was just taking every input that you can because you're not a salesman. And this is what I see happening all the time. And also what happened to me when I was very receptive to the teaching and coaching and whatever we have, then I learned. But when I code there, I already know this. I've been working so long in sales, then everything gets fucked up because, you're not always, when you have this humility and willing to learn, that's when you grow. But when you think you already know things, you stop growing and you start actually declining.
And it's horrible to have conversations with people like that often. They have their mindset, they have the tunnel vision. Everything that comes out of it is out of the realm of possibilities of actually being the truth. So the only thing that you can see is everything that's already been programmed in your brain. Nothing can change that. And that's not how the world works.
Fixed mindset, yes.
Yeah. And I wish I would remember. I need to look it up because I love the quote from Mark Twain. Have you actually ever read his books? The only thing I ever read is the quotes from him.
I haven't actually.
Yeah, it would be. I remember I purchased a collection of his novels or short stories some time back. It's on my Apple book, so it's on my list to read. But one of the things that I loved what he's saying, quote, is never argue with stupid people. They will drag you down to their level and beat you with experience. And
yeah,
I love that quotation. And I put this kind of people in the same bracket, that they already have their fixed mindset, and everything that I know, it's the truth. I don't have open-minded to that. It's a form of idiocy. And when you start to argue with a people like that, there's no winning.
If you think the history, human history, if we all had fixed mindset, we were still playing with rocks and stone, and we wouldn't have CDs, we wouldn't have books, we wouldn't have television, or we wouldn't have podcasts. We only were,
But my question is, are we better off now, or were we better off back then? That remains to be determined.
Well, I think, in my opinion, it really depends on, first of all, who you ask about it, and where does the person live you ask about it. Because I feel like there is this...
You live in Finland.
Yeah, I must say that and then comes to the second point, is the perspective. If I have a correct perspective, I must say that I'm blessed, happy, and lucky to live here. So it just must be that way. Because you're not going to create anything of value from a place of unappreciation and depressed and being not happy with what you have. And even like the worst case scenario, when people many times they actually have a goal and then they achieve it and they're still not happy. Because if you're not happy with what you have right now, you're not going to be happy with what you're going to have.
Let me interrupt you for a moment before I lose the thought. Do you think back in those days, people were depressed?
I do. I definitely do believe that it's... I believe they weren't in similar way depressed for things that are not, how would I say, should be depressed about. So of course our mind works differently. Like, who am I to say anybody like you should or shouldn't be depressed about something? It's always a personal story. But I do believe that back in times people didn't get depressed on such things. But like, it's also good to remember that we are social creatures. It's not so much about how much material possession we have. It's about, like, again, we come back to this, like, comparing ourselves to others and our status. So if you say that you live in Finland and you live at home and you have this microphone and those headset, you are a king in somewhere in a development country. But it doesn't make you, like, any happier. How would I say that? If you would have the same thing in there, you would be extremely much happier than you are in here. Yeah. Because you have this perspective, that you have this gratefulness that, oh, I have so much. But here your perspective changed because you are comparing yourself to others. You're not feeling as appreciative as in somewhere else with the things you have.
But one of the reasons, again, that I ask about this is that I read from Sebastian Junger in his book Tribe. I don't know if you're familiar with the book, but it talks about this sense of community, and it says an example about I don't remember all the details, but I think you can get the hang of it. But he's mentioning about the studies that were done in the USA, that some people who were raised within the Native Americans and then at some point in their life were moving into more Western societies, civilized societies, without an exception, everybody eventually wanted to go back to the Native American way of living for these communities, which is not the same way. But what's more interesting about that, even if you were like forced to move as a child, like you were born and raised to some point in these civilized environments, in Western environments, but you were forced to move in the Native American places, when they grew up, they never wanted to leave again. So no matter what were the circumstances, they wanted to go and live with the Native American societies, because they felt, also women felt, they had more freedom in it, freedom to choose how they live their life. There was a sense of community, connectivity, and of course spirituality, which I can also recognize when I was in Bali in September for a full month. We were staying in within a local family in a small village over there for 1 month, as I said, and you can see that the spirituality, for example, and the community in this environment is on completely different level to where I grew up, because we're way more individualistic, and like the sense of self and sense of how to live independent in your life, it's a little bit different than there. And every day spirituality and community is part of how they're being raised. And they were saying the same thing, that occasionally the young people, Balinese people from these small villages, they go abroad, they come to Europe for a couple of years to work, to gain experience or gain some more extra money, but they always want to go back to the local villages, small villages, because they have a sense of belonging, purpose, spirituality. There's the connection to nature and everything. It's just on a different level. So, which brought a question to my mind, like, is it inevitable once a society becomes developed and rich that we are losing this connection to nature, and we are losing this community-based environment, as we're getting richer and more developed?
Yeah, why?
Is that inevitable? I don't know.
Well, first of all, I think would be good questions to ask, why has it happened? Why is
the disconnection?
Yes.
Yeah, multiple reasons. Like one thing is the material. One thing is that like we're getting built the houses that we're living in. We're piling it up together, and we're living comfortably. We don't have to make an effort in our lives, so we become lazy. We become comfortable. Then when we're isolated from each other, we become more independent. Then we gain more material. We gain more purchasing power to buy more stuff for us. And it becomes appealing to get more and more because the other people have it too. So it becomes a competition. Then what we discussed before, we're not anymore connected to the nature. It's a combination of all of that. And we don't live with our families. That's one thing as well. Like when you can afford a place of your own, instead of being in the family compound or the same village with them, you're not supported by them anymore in a sense. So it's a combination of all of that. And that's my question exactly. Like, once it reaches a point, is it inevitable that we are actually losing all of that? Like sense of community, spirituality to some sense, and all that?
Well, I believe also, well, it might be like, I like to think that life is many times in cycles. You know, like sometimes you have things going very well in your life, and then you go down, and then you go back up again. So maybe it's like, it's a good point that maybe it's inevitable time that we live this way, but maybe when we see the consequences, we actually get back connected. Hey, we actually crave for community. We actually crave for these things.
But the problem in there is that we don't, if we are raised from the beginning of our life in an environment that doesn't have any of that, we don't understand what's missing. And also, like, when it comes to depression, addiction, I remember the quote, I hope I'm not butchering this quote by Johan Hari, but he was saying that the opposite of addiction is actually lack of connection. Like if you don't have connection to anyone, to your environment, communities, then you become addictive personality. Because you're craving for something that you don't have, which is, in this case, the sense of belonging, sense of community.
Well, yeah, in some ways I agree, because I do believe, and I have also noticed, that most of these people who have had addictions or have addictions, then they are missing the connection, because we all have basic needs. This is what I learned from Tony Robbins, that we have 6 human needs, which is like, we all need to like have certainty that we're going to live through the day. But then we also need to have like uncertainty, because it's going to be very boring if everything always happens the same way. But then we also need love and connection and growth, and we need to have a sense of contribution. So in that sense, I definitely can see that people want, the people who are addicted, they, at least the people that I have spoken to who overcame addiction, they say that I felt like I'm not good enough. So what is that? You're not good enough. You are separate. You are in separation. You're not belonging to the people, and say like, I'm different. I'm weirdo. And like you mentioned, like those people who were very bad numbers at schools or some other troubles at school, they feel disconnected again. And then again, I can definitely say that when you bullied, you feel like, yes, I'm worthless. I don't belong to anywhere. So all these things compile each other. And I also like to say that one of my friends said very correctly that if you end up in the worst and most dangerous prison in the world, where there is murderers and rapers and anybody could kill you anytime just for no reason, what is the worst place to end up in there?
I don't know.
It's the solitary consignment. So it's the safest place to be, but it's the worst place to end up into.
Good point. Yeah, that's quite an interesting.
So we are Yeah, so because we are looking more for connection than certainty.
Yeah.
You know? Remember those 6 human needs, we all need certainty, we all need connection, but most of us need more connection than certainty.
Yeah.
So even though you're very uncertain, you might die anytime, you're still rather there than disconnected from other people, from the solitary consignment. And that I can definitely see the correlation, like you mentioned. The people who are addicted are disconnected.
I think we could go on for multiple hours continuing with this topic, but I think we can call it a day. And next time we might have even a glass of whiskey to share these stories to bring it bring up the game a little bit. But do you have any final words to tell about to the listeners?
Yeah. Well, first of all, yes, the final words.
And where we can and where people can find you. Those two things.
Okay, so my final message to people would be that love yourself. You are worthy whatever you're going through, and also your story is worth telling. You know, because you never know who is listening to your story. Even if you think nobody's watching your story, somebody might be. You might be even saving a life. So speaking his and public speaking his others. That's my message.
That's beautiful.
Yes, and they could reach out to me from either social media. I have, maybe the Finnish name is a little bit difficult to spell. It's Tuomo Tiussa, Tuomo.
It will be written on the podcast episode.
Yeah, so either social media or you can reach out to me or check my website, and yeah.
All right. Thank you, Tuomo. Cheers.
Thank you very much, Ari. It was very nice being here, and next time with a glass of whiskey.
Definitely. See you soon.
See you soon.